Hi, this is Dave Chenault with Skylight Systems, and in this video, we're going to take you on all the steps required to set up a new SharePoint site, install SideKick365 Forms, and then import a predefined list of custom fields. Go ahead and bind that up to an HTML form you've already created. We'll add in the predefined JavaScript that we're going to onload. And we're generally just going to start from the very beginning and show you how quick and easy it is to get started using SideKick365 Forms. We also think this should be a good primer if you're a software developer out there and know of some standard forms that a lot of people need. This will show you how easy it is to create those standard forms. And please get in touch with us at info@Skylight Systems if you'd like to develop some forms that we could then offer to our customers. We think that there's a real opportunity here to create forms that are used commonly in business and then offer those up to people that buy SideKick365 Forms. And this video will show you how easy it is to work with some predefined, let's say the custom column definitions and the form layouts, and install those into your instance of SideKick365 Forms. So let's get started. Right now I'm looking at an HTML file that I created in Expressions. It's that free HTML forms designer that Microsoft offers up on the web. And you can see the basic layout here. I'm scrolling down to let you take a look. So here's my HTML form. And I've already defined, for example, in the add vendor, you'll see I have the ID as form type, value vendor, etc. Let's look at one other field just for instance. When I click on vendor, I'll see that the ID here is vendor. And then I have some JavaScript already loaded. So I'm going to be hiding and showing different things depending on what I put in there. So it's all set to go. Now I just have to set up a new instance of SideKick365 Forms. And I'm going to want to import in the custom column definition and then bind this form up to it. So let's see how to do that. And in this video, I'm going to pause a few times so that you don't have to watch while things are getting created. So let's come on into just the home page of our sample Skylight environment. And I'm going to go in and create a new subsite. And this is very standard to people that understand SharePoint. I'm just going to create a subsite and call that one Video 1. And what we'll do is we'll install Sidekick into that new team site. So let's call it Video 1. As soon as I can get the cursor to go onto there for me. And I want to make that a team site. So let's see if it'll cooperate here. Here we go. A lot of things running here. And I'll call that Video 1 as well. And let's go ahead and keep the permissions the same. And let's go ahead and create it. Now I'm going to pause after this starts creation and we'll come right back. Okay, we're back and the site has been created. Now I want to add in SideKick365 Forms. So I just go into add an app, or I can also do site contents. Let's do add an app. And what you'll see is apps you can add, and it's sitting right now here in my list of apps because I've got it installed for the entire organization. It's as if I had a site license. If you need to, you can just go out to the SharePoint store and purchase the license there. But in our case, it's already all set up in our environment. I'm just going to click on the Forms app and add it in. And you'll see the steps I have to go through. I just have to say trust it, and it'll take a moment and it'll create that new site for us that holds the SideKick365 Forms add-in. Here we go. Now you can see right now that it is adding in the SideKick365 Forms add-in for us, and it'll take a moment to download all the necessary information and set up all the parameters. So I'm going to put it on pause and we'll come back and start looking at how to add in all the custom field definitions, etc. Okay, we're back, and now SideKick365 Forms add-in has been added in to this Video 1 site. So let's go in and take a look right now at how the app looks when it's just been installed into the site that's holding it. So when I click on it, it takes a minute, and we're going to see that it's pretty lonely when the add-in is first installed. You're going to see that it just says list 1 and a few other things. Okay, so now we have SideKick365 Forms add-in all set to go. And you'll notice that the Create New menu does not have anything. There's just a simple task list and a list 1 here because we haven't yet defined anything within the add-in. And that's now what we're going to do is go in and start adding things with Manager. So let's pop over into Manager. And I've already started it, and the first thing it's asking for is, where is SideKick365 Forms at? And let's have a username and password. So let me go get that information. I'll get everything set up and sign in. Okay, I went ahead and got the URL, and you'll notice it's sort of short. When you go to the home page of the add-in, and let's take a look at that, and copy that in, you'll see it's quite long. But we don't need all of that whenever we want to put it in for both the add-ins in Office and Outlook and also for the Manager. All you need is just this bit right here, right before where it says Pages. That's the only bit you really need to have in this login, which is what I have here. So let me go ahead and sign in. And what you're going to see is Manager is going to fire up, and it's going to be pointing now at that new instance of SideKick365 Forms that we created. And here it is. As you can see, there's nothing yet defined. There's just these lists that are ready to go. So let's start setting these up. Here's sort of step 1. We're going to give it the name of the list that we want it to have in the add-in. And these actually can change. They don't have to be the same all the time when you use these templates. So it's really whatever fits your needs. So I'm just going ahead and typing this in. I'm going to say it uses documents, it uses tasks. I want it on the quick launch. I want it in order number 1 and show on the Create New menu. Now I also have one called Communities that I use for lookups. And this one does matter because I have this in code on my lookup definition. So I want to make sure I spell communities correctly. It doesn't use documents or tasks, but I do want to be able to add in information, and I want to show that on the quick launch bar as well. So I'm looking at everything here, making sure it's all okay. It looks fine to me, and I'm going to hit update. And it'll take a minute for the manager to create these new entities or lists in my instance of SideKick365 Forms. Now let's go back and take a look at that. I'm going to refresh the page. And what we should see on the left is a couple of new links to the vendor setup and the communities, and then of course on my Create New. But I don't have any fields defined or any information really set up yet. First thing I'll do is I'm going to add in some information about communities. Right now there's nothing there, but I want them to have data for the lookup when I start creating new vendor information screens here. So let's make up a few of these. I'll call it North, and we'll put in 2 or 3. And then we'll do South, East, and West, etc. So I'll come right back as soon as those are created. Okay, so I've created those 4 entries in the communities list. And remember, I just added this as an entity. In this case, they're not terribly exciting forms. They just have a name. But we could make custom columns for this list as well. And we could have a custom screen if we wanted, etc. But for our purposes, we just want to have a lookup value there. Okay, now we're ready to start adding in the custom column definition, and this is where it starts to get very interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look over in Manager, and we're going to see a few things prior to importing that in. So we'll come on over here, and I can see that I have this list 1 vendor setup right now. Let's go into the custom columns for that and see what we have right now. And if you look, you'll see there's no custom columns, but we want to import in the setup for this. Now it gets to be very interesting. let's take a look here. I had created this in another demo and exported out the custom column definition. And now I want to import that into this instance of SideKick365 Forms. But what does it look like? Let's go ahead and open this up. And I'm going to pause while Excel fires up, and we'll get it open once it looks at that CSV file. Okay, we're back, and now I'm looking at the contents of the CSV file that gets created when we export out the definition of all those custom fields we defined for that entity in SideKick365 Forms. And here they are. You can see the header, and it's just the name as you would expect that we put in is listed here in each of these columns with the internal name, the display's name, the screen element ID. All this is used within the HTML behind the scenes to bind up the information we put on the HTML screen and store it in SharePoint. So now the next step is going to be, okay, we want to import the data from this CSV file into SharePoint and set up all of these columns in SharePoint so we can start storing data. So I'll go ahead and close this down, and we're not going to save our changes. And I want to go back to the manager, and I'm going to now import that information into vendor setup. So let's go do that. So all I do is I select the import button, and I'll see that I can look at that vendor setup file, and I hit open. And it'll take it a few minutes to go through and walk through that file, and it'll go ahead and create all of the columns and all of the entries that we need in SideKick365 Forms to bind all of the screen elements with the data behind the scenes. So it's just started. I'm going to pause and come back as soon as it's completed. Okay, I'm back again, and you can see now that the import has completed. It took a few minutes to do all the importing, and what it did behind the scenes was create all these fields in SharePoint as well. So there's all of the values we had in that Excel file, and now if we go over into SharePoint and look at SideKick365 Forms, let's go into the vendor setup now, and I'm going to go sort of behind the scenes and take a look at what happened. So when I click here, you notice on the check mark I get this option now of a list. And I want to go into Modify View. And I'm going to see when I do that, that I have all of those new fields have been added in behind the scenes to our add-in, SideKick365 Forms, and into that setup vendor list. And there they are. The bank, the broker co-op, etc. All that's there, right? Now, a few more things we want to do while we're here. Let's go into the settings. And I'm going to want to put in some values for the states. I use those as a choice list. And I happen to have a list of state abbreviations in a notepad that I'm going to copy and paste into the properties of the states within this list. So let's go ahead and do that. It's coming up here in a second. And I'm going to go into my saved list of states and copy that information in. So there they are. I take all that information there, just copy it. And now when I come into settings, I'm going to be able to paste this right into it. So we'll wait for a minute for it to come up, and I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, here we are at the list settings, and I'm going to scroll down until I see one called choice. So let's see. There's the first one. It's the remit state. And when I click on that, I'm going to see that I can put in the values in that drop down. So I'm going to start with a little dash mark, and that's a little sort of trick. You want to put something in the first position like dash so it will default to that value whenever you first put in the form and say create a new form. And I'll say OK. And I'm going to do the same thing with the second state entry here. So let's go down and look at that. And I'm looking for a choice again. There's that first one. Here's the second one. And the same thing here. I'm just going to put in a dash, a return, and a paste. And now I'll hit save. And now we're getting somewhere. So I have the fields defined. I've defined some values in the choice list. And now what I want to do is go in and take a look at the HTML form and bind that up to it. So let's go do that. The next thing is if you notice in this folder, I have an HTML file, which is this Contoso2. And it's the same one I was working on here in Expressions. So I want to take this form and bind it to the vendor setup list, and all of those fields that I just defined, vendor attention, vendor, you can start to see a number of them here. Let's look at street address. This is custom remit address. And if I looked over in my manager, I would see that listed there. Just keep looking and I'll find it somewhere if I dig around in here long enough, right? So all this is ready to go. Now I'm going to bind up my HTML so that those fields know where to put the data. So let's go do that. So I come back over into my custom columns tab, vendor setup, load HTML, and I'm simply going to grab that Contoso2 HTML file that I already created. So there it is. And if I say open, it'll bind that to this list, and it's that fast. It doesn't take long. Now the next thing I want to do is I have some JavaScript that I created, and I want to bind that to this vendor setup so that it runs whenever I instantiate the form. On load is what they call that event. And this is not hard stuff to do. Anyone that understands HTML and JavaScript will get this instantly. Here's my JavaScript right here, and I say open, and I'm going to upload that. And it just takes a second. Now, just so you can see how that looks, that JavaScript has been shown in some other videos before. And by the way, all this is available to you. We're happy to send this so you can study it. But it's just a function that says if it's a new form, then I want to have a default of this pending button checked. If it's an edit mode, and we already had the broker button checked, then go ahead and display some information. If I had referral checked, then display some other information. And then finally, if it's just display, the same logic applies. If I have broker checked, then show a hidden section or not. This is how we hide and show sections in the form. And this runs every time you open up the form. Okay, so now we're getting really close. Let's go over and take a look and see if everything works as advertised. So I have populated the communities. I should be able to now, when I say vendor setup, get a nice form that has all of my data behind the scenes. I've bound up that HTML, and let's see if it works. If I hit broker, see how it shows in that part of the form that was hidden before. If I hit another button, it goes away. If I hit resident referral, it shows. Now, if I had selected this, and let's do that, next time I open it, this section of the document should be showing, or the form. And I'll put in a vendor name. I'll call it Dave. And attention will be Dave. So that'll be simple for us to find this. And we'll put a couple of addresses in here, test drive one way. And I'll give it a city. And let's give it a state. And there's our drop down. And we'll give it a zip code. And that's enough for now. And if I want to copy that, I've got some JavaScript inline from that form that'll copy it. Here's some different checkboxes that I defined in the HTML. Now I wanted to have the people picker working, so I'll put this was Alan. That's one of the users in our system. And the community, here comes the lookup. Let's take a look at that and see if that's working as advertised, and there it is. So I hope you're starting to see how easy this is. Once you get the definition in place, to instantiate a new instance of the form is pretty easy. And if I hit save, I should see this in just a minute on the list of forms I've saved. Okay, so everything worked as advertised. There's my Dave form. And when I go ahead and click on it, I will see that I have that form with all the data that I just picked saved. It takes a second because I have so much running for the form to populate with data, but you'll see it come up here in just a minute. There's our resident referral. Let's go ahead and edit this. And let's go to broker co-op this time. We're going to do a little changing on it. And let's just do this and this. Now we'll scroll on down and see how pending has been pre-selected. And we'll hit save. So that's it. I think it's a very instructive video, and it's showing you how you're able to soup to nuts set up SideKick365 Forms, how you can import in predefined custom fields, and any HTML and JavaScript that you've already created. And to export, it's really easy. You just go back to the manager, go to the list, hit the export, and it'll create a CSV file. So if you want to create predefined templates that we could offer customers, or if you want to use this internally and set up a bunch of starter forms, it's very easy. Just create your HTML, make your JavaScript if there is any, and then if you have any field definitions, go ahead and export those as a CSV file that you can then import as needed. And that's all there is to it. And all of this, again, is running in SharePoint. That's the beautiful thing about this solution. If I go in here and hit Vendor Setup, and I want to change this layout, it's what I'm used to in SharePoint. Let's go into the list. Let's go into the Modify View. The manager makes all of the proper fields for us. And so I can go in and pick fields that I want to add to this view and make them show up. So let's say I wanted to have, the business address and the business city, and OK on that. Now my view will come up with those two fields added in to that list. That's all there is to it. And of course, all the features in SharePoint that you expect with searching works, document management works, permission management works, workflows work, and that's a topic for another whole video. So I hope you found this to be a very interesting video and answered a lot of your questions. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to go ahead and email us at info@skylightsystems.com, and that's SKYLITESYSTEMS.com. This is Dave Chenault. Thanks so much for your attention. Kind of a long video, but I think a lot of information was presented, and I hope it all made sense. Talk to you again.